بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيبنا رسول الله. Have good intentions. There is a lot of detail to cover here, so um, I'm going to try to just read through it, and I'll explain anything I think needs to be explained. And if there's anything that's not clear, then go ahead and ask. Or if you need to ask about an issue, go ahead and ask. Okay, inshallah. طيب. The author said, the linguistic meaning of bid'ah, innovation, is ما أحدث على غير مثال سابق. That which was made without a previous example. Linguistically. Religiously, it is that which was not documented in the Quran and did not come in the Sunnah. Ibn al-Arabi said, the innovation, the muhdathah, you can call it bid'ah or muhdathah. Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. You can call it bid'ah and you can call it muhdathah. He said the innovation is not dispraised merely because of the expression innovation or because of its meaning, which is being new. The innovation is only dispraised if it opposes the sunnah. Also, any innovation that calls to misguidance is dispraised. Now, you should know that bid'ah in the terminology of the ulama, in their terminology, and I mean in the aqidah, the bid'ah originally, religiously means ma yukhalifu sunnah, what is against the sunnah. I mean by that, when the scholars would call something bid'ah, usually, without any restriction, without saying good or bad, they said hadihi bid'ah. They meant it's bad. Heresy. And heresy in English pretty much means bid'ah in religion. That is a dispraised innovation in religion. This is heresy, isn't it? However, there's still something before that. Before that establishment, there's still something before that, which is what we just mentioned. The linguistic meaning of bid'ah and the general religious meaning of bid'ah, the general religious meaning of it, which is something that wasn't documented in the Quran or the Sunnah. And then there's the unrestricted usage of bid'ah. So this unrestricted usage means heresy. In the aqidah, heresy in one's creed. That is, even before we look at his deeds, a practice that he's doing, an act, as opposed to a conviction or a creed in his heart, an act that he's doing. Is it a bid'ah or not? That's another thing. The Wahhabiyya have adhered to the mere designation of something as an innovation to dispraise it. The classification of innovations. There are two types of innovations. The first is the innovation of misguidance. This is the innovation that opposes the Quran and the Sunnah. The second is the innovation of guidance, which is the innovation that complies with the Quran and the Sunnah according to the assessment of the people of knowledge. That is, in accordance with the scholars who have the right to speak about those religious cases. So, innovation of misguidance, bid'atu dalalah. Innovation of guidance, bid'atu huda. Due to the blindness of their hearts, some did not realize that this classification is understood from the hadith of the two sheikhs from the route of Aisha. من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. Whoever innovates into this affair of ours, what does not comply with it is rejected. That is, it is thrown back to him. فهو مردود عليه. They used this hadith to say that every innovation is bad and didn't realize that this hadith is evidence of two types of innovations. It is understood from the word of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ma laysa minhu, what does not comply with it, that the innovation would only be rejected if it is against the religious law. If the innovation was in compliance with the religious law, it would not be rejected. Ma laysa minhu, what does not comply with it. Here, it's important to know that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with bayan. Bayan means clarification. And since the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with bayan, it means that all of his words must be counted, must be considered. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't say anything that doesn't have a meaning or doesn't have a reason. It is understood from the word of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ma laysa minhu, what does not comply with it, that the innovation would only be rejected if it is against the religious law. That is, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not say, "Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha fahuwa radd." Whoever innovates in this affair of ours is rejected. He didn't say that. He gave a restricting statement. So those who say that every innovation is bad have explained this hadith, and using this hadith as evidence for that, have explained this hadith as if the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said something that doesn't count, or something that doesn't truly mean anything. It didn't add any benefit to the statement. Also, in the narration of Ibn Uwana, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma la yajuz." The one who innovates in this affair of ours what is not permissible. This is the one who's rejected. Our Shaykh said in his big explanation of At-Tahawi that the innovation of misguidance is what the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam meant when he said, وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَمُحْدَثَاتِ الْأُمُورِ فَإِنَّ كُلَّ مُحْدَثَةٍ بِدْعَةٍ وَكُلَّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. Beware of the newly invented matters. For surely every newly invented matter is an innovation, and every innovation is misguidance. So, we said there's two types of innovations. One is innovation of misguidance, one is innovation of guidance. That's proven by a hadith that we just cited. من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. That is, this hadith mentions both types, is signals to two types of innovations. And then there's a hadith that specifically talks about one of them, one of those two types. The innovation of the innovation of misguidance is the one that's meant in the hadith, وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَمُحْدَثَاتِ الْأُمُورِ فَإِنَّ كُلَّ مُحْدَثَةٍ بِدْعَةٍ وَكُلَّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. It means beware of newly invented matters. For surely every newly invented matter is an innovation. For surely every newly invented matter is an innovation, and every innovation is misguidance. As if you translate it word for word. So this hadith is a documentation for the first type of innovation we mentioned, the innovation of misguidance. Then there's a hadith that documents the other type. The innovation of guidance is what is meant by his saying, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, man sanna fil Islam sunnatan hasanah falahu ajruha wa ajru man amila biha ba'dah min ghayri an yanqus min ujurihim shay. Whoever starts in Islam a good practice, a good sunnah, has its reward and the reward of whoever practices it after him until judgment day without lessening any of their rewards. We'll come back to mention, if Allah will, that sunnah in this hadith does not mean the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Here, sunnah is by the linguistic meaning of sunnah, which is a way. Both hadiths are authentic. Man sanna fil Islam sunnatan hasanah, whoever starts a good practice in Islam, falahu ajruha, he has its reward, is authentic hadith. وَكُلُّ مُحْدَثَةٍ بِدْعَةٍ, every innovation, every newly invented thing is innovation. وَكُلَّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ, and every innovation is misguidance. This is an authentic hadith. So it is obligatory to reconcile between them, not to reject one for the other, but to put them together as much as possible. This is a rule for Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. If the evidence is authentic and there appears to be a difference between them, a contradiction, there appears to be a contradiction between them, then there are several steps we'll take. The first step is to reconcile between them, to find a way to explain them in a way that not only complies with the religion but complies with the Arabic language. It can't go against the Arabic language. It has to be in compliance with Arabic language and in compliance with the religious rules. If that doesn't work, then they do something else which we won't go into. And it works here. By saying like Ash-Shafi'i said, it is obligatory to reconcile between them by saying like Ash-Shafi'i said. In Manaqib al-Shafi'i by Al-Bayhaqi, in Manaqib al-Shafi'i, Al-Bayhaqi narrates with his chain of narration back to Ash-Shafi'i that he said, المحدثات من الأمور ضربان أحدهما ما أحدث يخالف كتابا أو سنة أو إجماعا أو أثرا فهذه البدعة الضلالة، والثاني ما أحدث من الخير لا خلاف فيه لواحد من هذا فهي محدثة غير مذمومة. فهي محدثة غير مذمومة. The innovated matters are of two types. The first of them is what was innovated and opposes anything from the book, the sunnah, the consensus, or the athar. Athar, frequently used to refer to the narrations of the companions and those who came after them. This is the innovation of misguidance. The second is what is innovated among the good things and does not oppose any of that. This is the innovation that is not blameworthy. By this categorization, both hadiths are applied and neither of them is voided. The principle in usul and hadith is that if there appears to be conflict between two pieces of religious evidence, they are merged as much as possible. If there is no way to merge them, which is not the case here, then if the history of the references is known, that one of them preceded the other, that one of them came before the other, then the latter abrogates the former. The later one would abrogate the previous one. If there's no way to make them comply, then they check the date. If they confirm that one of them came after the other, then the one that came after the first one abrogates it, abrogates the first one. Nasakh. If that is not available, then one is given priority over the other, through one of the established ways mentioned by the scholars of usul and hadith terminology. Go ahead, question. The word thanna, yes. Some ignorant person said it means revive, not start. What does it mean linguistically? Thanna is the past tense verb for the noun sunnah. A sunnah is a way. So the one who makes a way, what is the verb said for him? Thanna. Thanna kada. He made a sunnah. That's what it means. So here the hadith says, Man sanna fil islami sunnatan. The one who makes a sunnah. And it's even has emphasis in it, because the noun here, sunnah, is a direct object of its own verb. When the noun is a direct object of its own verb, so it's maf'ul mutlaq, then this gives emphasis. Yani, this means that it's not, this linguistically means it's not figurative. Ash-Shafi'i also said, Al-bid'atu bid'atan, mahmudatun wa mazmumah. فما وافق السنة فهو محمود وما خالف السنة فهو مذموم. There are two types of innovations, praiseworthy and blameworthy. Whatever agrees with the sunnah is praised, and whatever opposes the sunnah is dispraised. So, we gave, linguistic definition of bid'ah. Then we gave general religious definition for bid'ah. And we gave more specific explanations for bid'ah, such as what is meant in terms of the aqidah. We haven't really talked about the practical innovations. Now we're just clarifying what is the meaning of innovation linguistically, technically, and what's the religious evidence for that. And we gave nothing but sahih hadith with clear explanation, alhamdulillah. And if this is the case, then the imams of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, you could say, have put your stamp on that. And there it is from Ash-Shafi'i, rahimahullah. It's not Ash-Shafi'i opposing the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So some people, they just totally ignore the statement of Ash-Shafi'i here. They say, oh, what is that? The Prophet said? That's due to their ignorance and their brainwashed situation. Rather, Ash-Shafi'i, he correctly spoke about the issue of bid'ah, rahimahullah. And Nawawi said in Tahzib al-Asma'i wal-Lughat, البدعة بكسر الباء في الشرع هي إحداث ما لم يكن في عهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم، وهي منقسمة إلى حسنة وقبيحة، وهي منقسمة إلى حسنة وقبيحة. وقال الإمام الشيخ المجمع على إمامته وجلالته وتمكنه في أنواع العلوم وبراعته أبو محمد عبد العزيز بن عبد السلام رحمه الله ورضي الله عنه في آخر القواعد: البدعة منقسمة إلى واجبة ومحرمة ومندوبة ومكروهة ومباحة. قال: والطريق في ذلك أن تعرض البدعة على قواعد الشريعة. فإن دخلت في قواعد الإيجاب فهي واجبة أو في قواعد التحريم فهي محرمة أو الندب فمندوبة أو المكروه فمكروهة أو المباح فمباحة. And Nawawi said, in the religious law, al-bid'ah, with a kasra on the ba, that is b, and bid'ah, is the invention of what did not exist during the time of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and is categorized as good or ugly. And it is categorized as good or ugly. The imam and sheikh whose greatness, proficiency, mastery in the different types of knowledge and status of being an imam are agreed upon, Abu Muhammad Abdul Aziz ibn Abdus Salam, may Allah have mercy upon him. He is also famous as Izzuddin ibn Abdus Salam. May Allah have mercy upon him and accept his deeds, said towards the end of the book of Al-Qawa'id, the innovation is divided into obligatory, prohibited, recommended, disliked, and permissible. The way to reach that is by applying the innovation to the rules of the religious law. So if it applied to the rules of what necessitates an obligation, then it is obligatory. Or to the rules of prohibition, then it is prohibited. Or to the rule, or to the recommendation, then it would be recommended. Or to the disliked, then it would be disliked. Or the permissible, then it would be permissible. And that's a very clear statement. And very nicely put. He is one of the sheikhs of Imam al-Nawawi, and he was a strong scholar. Izzuddin, rahimahullah. The statement of Faqih ibn Abidin, the statement of Faqih ibn Abidin said in Raddul Mukhtar clarifies this quote of Ibn Abdus Salam. What did he say? The innovation could be obligatory, like the preparation of the evidence for refuting the misguided sects, and learning grammar and nahu, or syntax, which enables the understanding of the book and the sunnah. Or recommended, like the innovation of inns for students of knowledge and the poor, schools, and every charitable matter that did not exist in the first days of Islam. Or disliked, such as decorating the mosque. Or permissible, such as exaggerating in delicious foods, drinks, and fancy clothing. This is in reference to the one who wants to convey the hadith and interpret the Quran. That is, if a person wanted to study the Quran and be a mufassir, he wants to explain the Quran, then to be a mufassir, he needs to learn nahu. Or he wants to be among those who convey the hadith. He wants to be a hadith scholar and study the hadith and pass the hadith on through sanad. Then he needs to learn nahu. And why that's an innovation? Because they didn't used to learn nahu. The Prophet ﷺ and his companions did not study nahu. And the Arabs didn't study nahu. The Arabs didn't used to learn their language. They didn't used to go to school to learn their language. They grew up speaking fluent, eloquent, classical Arabic. I think a good example is to imagine if everybody walking around spoke like Shakespeare, naturally. Freestyling poetry for all types of situations. In war, love, death, birth, whatever. One of them would say a line of poetry and then another one would match his line of poetry with something according to the same meter and the same rhyme. The people didn't start to study Nahu until the time of the students of the companions, or the time of Ali, radiallahu anhu. When Abu al-Aswad was on a rooftop with his daughter, looking at the sky and the stars. So his daughter said to him, Ya abati, ma ahsanu sama. So he responded to her according to what she said to him. So he said, Nujumuha. That is, he understood that she said to him, O father, what is the most beautiful thing of the sky? So he said, it's stars. Then she said, Ya abati ma aradtu hadha. O father, I did not intend this. أردت التعجب بحسن السماء وتلألأ نجومها. She said, I meant to express my amazement at the beauty of the sky and the beautiful sparkle of the stars. قال افتحي فاك. He said, pronounce it with a fatha. ما أحسن السماء. Then he went to Imam Ali the next day and he said, something's happening to our children. He told him what happened, and Imam Ali said, this is because of the mix between the Arabs and the non-Arabs. Meaning that before Islam, the Arabs didn't used to go out a lot. Not like they did after Islam, of course. And out of Arabia, I mean. And the non-Arabs were not coming in to the Arabs. So with the coming of Islam, Arabs were going out, non-Arabs were coming in, and then Arabs and the non-Arabs mixed, and it affected the Arabs' ability to speak their language properly. So that's when Lahan started to enter into Arabic. That's when people started making mistakes around this time. And of course, not everybody. It started here. And people were still extremely powerful in the Arabic language. So Imam Ali said to Abu al-Aswad, after a few days, he told him, write what I will dictate to you now. He said to him, Al-kalamu هو اللفظ المركب المفيد بالوضع وأقسامه ثلاثة اسم وفعل وحرف. And he told him a few other things. He told him that al-kalam, and he told him speech is what he told him. Like how the beginning of Al-Ajurumiyya is. This is what's narrated. He told him just a few things, made him write it down. Then he said to him, Unhu nahwa hadha. Now you build on this. Take this, what I just gave you, and go and expand on it. And this is the beginning of the documentation of Nahu and the study of Nahu. One of the sheikhs said that its case is similar to the undergrad preparing his PhD, the grad student, preparing his PhD for his professor who's going to critique him. So Abu al-Aswad used to go and listen to people talk, listen to the Quran and things like that, and he would start documenting the chapters of Nahu. And then he would go back to Imam Ali and read to him what he wrote down, and Ali would advise him and tell him, yeah, add this, It was something like that. Why didn't you mention that? And then the Arabic language, the rules of Arabic language were passed on. So if you want to learn Arabic, also learn by chain of narration. Learn from the Muslims who learned Arabic by isnad and talaqqi. They took the books of Nahu by talaqqi through the ulama, because that also goes back to the Sahaba and the Tabi'un, as opposed to learning Arabic in some university. There's a huge difference. For you. However, our Sheikh said that this last example about wearing fancy clothes and eating delicious meals being permissible, our Sheikh said that this last example is disliked. He disagreed with that point, rahimahullah. Because luxury, tana'um, is disliked. Among the most devastating references against these people who claim that there is no such thing as a good innovation is what Ibn Taymiyah said in his book, قواعد جليلة في التوسل والوسيلة وكل بدعة ليست واجبة ولا مستحبة فهي بدعة سيئة وهي ضلالة باتفاق المسلمين ومن قال في بعض البدع إنها بدعة حسنة فإنما ذلك إذا قام دليل شرعي أنها مستحبة. He said, every innovation that is not obligatory or recommended is an evil innovation. Right there shows that Ibn Taymiyah takes this position. That's devastating, because then they have to label Ibn Taymiyah with what they labeled us in this mas'ala. Either they have to say there's a good innovation, or they have to say Ibn Taymiyah is mubtadi'. Ibn Taymiyah is an innovator, is a heretic. This or that. So that's devastating reference.